everyone. Welcome along to the VCO Esports Studio with me, Ben Constanduros. This, I think, is now the 35th edition of our Esports Studio, and I really hope that you've been enjoying meeting some of the movers and shakers of the sim racing world, alongside some of our pros that do enjoy and are very good at sim racing. If you've missed any of our chat shows, make sure you get into our playlists and have a look. And you'll see that the very first person that we ever interviewed on our VCO Esports Studio was a certain Joshua Rogers, a man who has, of course, won championships left, right, and centre, and last week won our first championship, the VCO ProSIM Championship. And Josh joins us this evening for a slightly different look, because obviously we've already spoken to you, Josh, about your history of sim racing. So this is more about kind of winning, I suppose. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be back, and yeah, I mean, obviously, last time we covered a lot of those other things, but yeah, no, it was awesome to be able to come away with the VCO championship. I think it's been a fantastic season or series. Obviously, it's not over yet, but yeah, no, it's fantastic to be a part of something like that, and the professionalism throughout has been really impressive.
We're going to take a deep dive on your thoughts on the VCO Pro Sim series, as is its first edition, and it's great to have feedback from a man like yourself. But first of all, I just want to talk generally about success and failure, because motorsport actually generally has quite a high rate of failure for a driver, because every driver wants to win, and it's impossible to win every single race, although you do your very best to do so. How do you deal with the highs of winning the Pro Sim series versus a couple of days later, or even maybe 24 hours later, having a disappointing result?
Yeah, it's it's difficult, but I think ultimately, what kind of defines a great racer is always how they take their losses, or even just anyone. Really, I think our losses is what defines us, and how we cope with them, and use what happened to obviously learn from, whether it was a mistake of your own, whether it was a mistake from someone else. There's always something you could have done a little bit differently. How we learn from that and move forward from that. Obviously, the highs of winning is always the goal. Even though sometimes it's not possible to win every single event that we enter, obviously that's always the main focus. But when it doesn't happen, you just have to make sure that you can kind of dwell on it for a little bit. It's important to grieve slightly, to really kind of feel that pain and understand, okay, I don't really want to go through this again, and use that then newfound motivation to try and kind of work on those flaws, and fix the mistakes. But yeah, it's important to try and move on with it once you've obviously kind of established what went wrong. Otherwise, then it's obviously just going to always be on the back of your mind, and especially with races that are so close now. I mean, obviously we had the VCO Pro Sim Series on Wednesday, BMW 120 on Sunday yesterday, and then obviously PESC next weekend. You have to try and make sure that you can move on from these things quickly. Otherwise, they're going to hinder the progress and the performance in the following events. So yeah, I mean, it's always about how you take our losses. That kind of defines us. But yeah, no, it's you can dwell on it, but it's important to try and move on with it as quickly as you can, just so that you can get your focus in the right place.
Preparation for so many of these races involves days and days of chasing the perfect setup, sometimes analysing which vehicle to use in a particular event. But the VCO Pro Sim series was a little bit different. Did you enjoy the fact that there wasn't the ability to do too much practice, or did you find ways to practice anyway?
To be honest, I actually really enjoyed it. It was because I mean the format's so different, right? And it's not something that we have anywhere else in sim racing, really. I mean, primarily, we, at least in most events, we know a calendar beforehand. We know, the obviously we're going to have to work on setup and stuff like that, which obviously this series is fixed. And I mean, also too, the competitors were changing week in, week out. So, like the driver pairing. So there's so much that was different about this one, and it was a nice fresh change, especially I think in the middle of what's been such a hectic, jam-packed competitive season. Being able to have a series that you can, the day before when the tracks are announced, just start doing some laps and you know, kind of have a little bit more fun with it. I think it was also a cool experience and an enjoyable experience practicing with all the real drivers as well. Obviously, a lot of them we knew personally, but through kind of other activities. But I mean, ultimately, it was it was just a different experience, kind of getting to learn from them what they do differently, how we can maybe implement that into our driving, and I'm sure things went both ways as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was just a fantastic series, and I think just a fresh and welcome change, especially kind of mid-season what we had.
Driving style wise, you talk a bit about kind of exchanging ideas. Because you have a fixed setup, did it mean that you actually had to adjust, rather than the setup of the car, you adjusted the way that you drove the car to combat certain weird things that perhaps that setup had?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, we could change brake bias, but that was it. So ultimately, you know, if the car, which in general it was usually quite understeery, which is perfectly
Yeah.
acceptable. You know, it has to cater for everybody. We do kind of have to adjust our driving style a little bit because of that. We can't necessarily throw the car into the corner as hard as we might want to, because probably won't turn in the mid turn. So you know, we do have to kind of adjust that approach slightly. But I mean, you know, it's not like we're practicing on setup from like virtual racing school, for example, and then jumping back. You know, that would then obviously be a lot harder. But because we're obviously driving on the same setup week in, week out, you know, we can fine tune our driving there. But yeah, obviously there's no real setup changes to be made. So a lot of the technique and exchanging ideas was always from the driving perspective. And you know, I mean, there's such a fine line, really, that the tiniest of little input changes can make the biggest of differences. So yeah, it was also kind of fun, and in a way, kind of helps develop our driving skills. I mean, ultimately, you know, throughout a race distance, for example, like an endurance race, the car's balance is going to change significantly over the whole race, and you can't necessarily make a setup change mid-race. So you always kind of have to be adaptable and try and adjust your driving style where need be. And this is kind of something that helped us train that as well. So it's been it's been useful in a lot of different ways. And yeah, like you say, the setup options are limited, so we do definitely have to adapt our driving style a little bit.
And did you feel like the understeer element of most of the setups suited your driving style? Are you a man that is okay with a bit of understeer?
I'll be honest, absolutely not. I'll always take oversteer every day of the week over understeer. Main reason being, it's a lot easier to make your car stable than it is to make it turn. So, you know, I always tend to prefer a little bit of oversteer. I mean, I guess that didn't necessarily hurt us too much in the end, but yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's like I say, it's got to cater for everybody. So that's why they did what they did. And honestly, the car was quite nice to drive. It was balanced to drive, which, you know, in sim racing isn't necessarily the fastest way to go about things, but it definitely makes it more enjoyable.
Before we get deep dive into the championship races that you took part in, I want to talk a little bit about the fun races, because they didn't seem to suit you as much, especially last round in the super stock. You kind of didn't really feature. Were you struggling a bit with that car? I mean, especially considering how absolutely balmy the whole concept of taking that round as road courses.
Yeah, I mean, usually I didn't seem to struggle too bad, but yeah, in that late model, I don't know, I definitely wasn't feeling it. I mean, I bought the car, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes before the session went up. So I mean, ultimately, that's
Yeah.
the whole point of the fun race. But yeah, I mean, we had some good battles there. Ultimately, that series for me was just something to kind of take my mind off things, and I mean, the main focus was always on the championship races anyway. But yeah, I mean, it didn't necessarily suit me the best, considering usually I tend to be quite good at adapting to new circuits and new cars quite quickly. But yeah, in that particular scenario, not so much. But yeah, I mean, it was fun regardless, and you know, you don't necessarily have to be fighting up the front to have some good battles and enjoy yourself.
And it also must be nice to be forced to drive something different, because you must spend so much of your time on iRacing driving the same 3 or 4 different cars, that actually to be able to jump into something like the Lotus 79, for instance, at the start of the season, is a different sensation for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. From a competitive perspective, in the competitive season, like you say, really, we're only ever driving 3 or 4 cars, and usually, to be honest, most of the time spent driving something else is just jumping into a random oval race in NASCAR. So, ultimately, yeah, it was nice to be able to, I guess, yeah, be forced to drive something different. Um, Not necessarily meaning that the driving style was too different or anything, but it's always kind of a fresh change, and it was nice. I think in some cases maybe it was a little bit outrageous with the combinations, but at the end of the day that made it more fun, and that's what the series was about. So yeah, but like you say, yeah, I guess it is a fresh change considering we're used to driving the same 3 or 4 cars most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the championship races then that you took part in. First of all, the way that the driver pairings were selected obviously very much fell in your favour. There wasn't very much you could do about where you placed in your I rating in comparison to others, because it started with the highest I rating had the first pick, and that was Max picking Max. That didn't really work out for him too well, did it? And then pretty quickly it was down to you, and there was no real contest for you as to who you were going to choose, really.
Yeah, no, it was actually good for us, really. I mean, ultimately, we knew that Bunica was going to pick Verstappen, and I was next in line. So uh, basically, had free reign in that sense, and we kind of put a lot of thought into it, to be honest, in the weeks leading up to it, kind of what we were going to try and accomplish, and obviously, Anshin joined us at Coanda a few weeks before. So we figured it would be a good idea to try and convince him to jump in the series, and yeah, I mean, it's been a fantastic pairing. We've had some great success, and obviously, I'll be looking to try and help him clinch the Pro Drivers Championship in the next round. But yeah, I mean, the whole kind of draft system was interesting. I think potentially. Maybe it might have been a little bit different had it been based on I don't know, maybe like a time trial or something like that, but or like average maybe across all the drivers. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to be part of, and yeah, like the draft is something that's different. Usually, it's not something you see too often in motorsport, let alone sim racing. I
Yeah.
think really it's only. I mean, I've only ever seen it in a couple series, so it's a cool initiative, and yeah, I mean, it's as a first go, it's no, it was awesome, it was fantastic.
Of driver pairings, I imagine you are pretty unique in that most others don't live in the same house together. So, do you think that had a bit of an advantage with you able to literally be over Ai-chan's shoulder and talk him through various things when you needed to work together?
In the beginning, a little bit, yeah, for sure. I mean, he had to leave in December, so we only kind of did the first 3 or 4 rounds together in the same house, that is. But yeah, especially during practice, being able to just go over there and kind of see what he's doing, maybe give a little bit of feedback here and there. Obviously, during the races, that wasn't something that we were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, during practice, it's a different, it's certainly a different environment for sure, because we're so used to just talking over the internet that actually kind of being able to interact in person, I feel like you tend to get a lot more out of lot more out of the interaction from an information standpoint. So I guess it means that we can kind of cram a lot more into a shorter period of time, which ultimately gives us more time on track to be able to then execute. So yeah, it was a different experience for sure. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Hopefully we can do it again. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to be able to have this opportunity.
And I imagine it was pretty clear for you who your competitors were going to be once you saw that the draw of Verstappen, Beneke, and Job and Felipe. It was there was not too many surprises, were there?
No, I mean, we knew right from the get go who was going to be the main competitors. Obviously, those you listed there. I think also Mac and Sage were also extremely strong, and I mean, there's plenty of other guys out there too. I think all of the, or I think it's safe to say that pretty much all of the top sim racers had top real drivers with them as well. So
Yeah.
I mean, it made for fantastic racing and a great championship. But yeah, coming into it, we definitely kind of knew and had a rough idea too, of course, with team affiliations and stuff like that. You know, we had a rough idea of who was going to pick who, or at least who was on whose radar. So I guess that meant that we could kind of prepare a counter a little bit, but at the same time, you know, everyone was going to pick who they were going to pick, and we couldn't influence that. So yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, I mean, like I say, it made for a fantastic event and series. And I mean, it's just also, it's honestly still surprising to see the level of, well, it's not surprising, it's impressive to see the level of commitment from the pro drivers to this series. And I think part of that is probably due to the fact that, you know, they're not running it on their own. They've got someone else that they need to try and make sure that that they're giving the best opportunity as possible. So no, it's awesome to see. It's fantastic, and it's great to see the level of commitment from the other side of the pond.
So let's quickly spool through the various rounds. First round was affected by Max Verstappen's participation and choice of Motegi as a track. Didn't go so well for you and I, Chan, though.
Nah, made the mistake into turn three, locked the right front. Ended up off in the gravel. I think we ended up coming back to P5 or something. But yeah, it wasn't the optimal weekend considering we had some fantastic speed. But I mean, with the drop rounds that we had in that championship, we knew that, you know, worst case scenario, we can still come back from this and try and utilize that as a drop. But yeah, not the best weekend.
Yeah, the drop thing, I think, is what surprised me, and therefore, as the official commentator of the series, everybody else that didn't read the rulebook. Because I think ultimately, if there was no drop scores, you wouldn't have clinched the championship at this moment in time with one round to go at the end of March, and you would still have to participate and score a couple of points in the last round. But because the drop scores eliminated your small collection of points from round three, it has given you enough of a buffer. So I didn't really know that was a thing, but I'm glad it was a thing, and it makes sense to be a thing. You bounced back, though, in round two of the championship with probably the least surprising result of your life, taking pole position at Bathurst.
Yeah, I don't know. I've just got a thing with that track. I really enjoy it. But but no, that was an awesome race. I think, you know, especially considering how strong the draft is in the F3, to be able to kind of break the draft and kind of just slowly drive away was a nice feeling. But yeah, I've definitely got a little bit of a sweet tooth for that track. I don't know. It's done well for me in the past. I've also had my fair share of hard results there too. But no, yeah, that was an awesome one, and Chan drove fantastic in that race as well.
Do you put that down to just being Australian and therefore that's the first track you choose to go and drive? Have you got more experience there, or is it's just something you can't really explain?
I mean, I guess I've probably done more laps around that place than most. But I don't know. I mean, I'll be honest, it probably was one of the first tracks that I drove when I got iRacing back in 2014. 100% actually, definitely would have been the first track that I bought. But I think also too, it's more so comfortability kind of around the walls and stuff. I think that's the main thing. I mean, you know, if we went to another street circuit that wasn't Bathurst but had a kind of similar style, it might pan out the same. I might feel comfortable there too. So I don't know. It's a bit of both, I think. But I mean, having done so many laps around that place, there's so many little fine details that just add up tiny bits of time. And obviously, if you can do a lot of that over a whole lap, you know, we're talking bigger numbers. So, but yeah, I guess I mean, we'll just put it down to home track. We'll just do that.
Comfortability, I'm not sure is a word, but we'll allow it to slide as you live in Germany and I live in France. Made up words come into our vocabulary all of the time. I like it. Comfortability. I'm going to try and use it in the future. Round three of the championship. I think you actually finished over the line pretty well, didn't you? But the confusion of the pit stops suddenly became a thing.
I think round three was Suzuka.
Suzuka, yeah.
I think, yeah, we had the incident in the first few corners. I think at the start of that race.
Ah, yes.
And I mean, we did end up getting a slight penalty with the pits as well. I mean, a lot of other people did at the same time. I think there was a lot of confusion there. But
What was the
yeah,
confusion?
I think it was the pit window opening time, basically, just with the system. But I mean, ultimately, you know, the stewards and stuff cleared all that up for us afterwards, which was great. And I don't think anyone ever fell into that trap again for the rest of the season.
No.
So it was yeah, it was also an initiative from them on that. But yeah, I think we ended up finishing that one 22nd or 23rd or something. So that was our first major drop round for sure.
And I guess by having that in your points haul up until the point where drop scores were taken into account, it kind of artificially made you look more in touch with the rest than you actually were. Because then, if you remove that, then suddenly everybody else is a long way behind you. Brazil, Interlagos circuit, pole position and victory, pretty simple, really.
Yeah, that was a nice one. I mean, I think we certainly had a good jump and a good first few corners. I think we had like a second, maybe 1.2 seconds back to Alejandro at that point. And yeah, I mean, ultimately they ended up getting into a bit of a tangle in turn 3, which kind of made things a little bit easier for us. But I think the speed was still strong and we were still kind of slowly etching away. So yeah, another great result. And again, Chen drove fantastic in that race too. You know, he jumped in the car and he did what he needed to do to get it home. And yeah, it was. I mean, that track's also another one that really suits that kind of style of car too. So that was good fun, that one. But a little bit eventful at the start for the guys behind us, that's for sure.
It's when you've been in the car first, you've taken pole position and then pretty much led from the front and cleared off. It's been a lot harder for you to be second in the car because of various issues, or just simply qualifying hasn't been there from Ayachan in comparison to the others. But that was different in round 5 because you didn't qualify the car, but you did take the victory at Snetterton in a place where I imagine, again, you hadn't done too many laps.
No, especially not in that car. That was an interesting combo. It was fun though. But yeah, that race was. I mean, I'm pretty sure we started off. I mean, I definitely remember Sage got a slight call penalty, which obviously made things a little bit easier for us, unfortunately. But yeah, I think we got off the line well. Maybe we were leading after the first few corners, but then I mean, I think it was Phil Dennis at that point.
Yeah.
Was yeah. I mean, he was insanely quick, and I basically was just kind of important to tell Chan, you know, it's all right. We can sit second now. You know, just try and lose as minimal time to the other guys behind us as well, because there was kind of a big train where we kind of had broken away the front 2 cars, and the rest of the train was catching up. So it was important to try and keep it a 2-way battle rather than like a 7 or 8-way battle. And I mean, I knew that when I was going to be getting in the car that I was going to be going up against Simona. So I felt comfortable in that duel. Ultimately, it was going to be really close. He was doing an insanely good job, in all honesty. His speed was really strong, and I think I probably would have only caught him maybe with 2 or so laps to go. I think the gap after we came out of the pits was 5 or so seconds. But yeah, unfortunately, he had a bit of a spin in the last corner. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we put a little bit of pressure on. I'm not sure, but yeah, and from there it was kind of smooth sailing. But it was going to be an awesome finish. It was going to be a nail biter, and I was looking forward. To be honest, I was excited for that, and I was prepared.
So then we moved on to round 6, which was at the Nürburgring. Once again, qualifying for you guys as the esport races and pole position for you. But a really entertaining battle, once again, that happens so much in sim racing at the moment between you and Sebastian Job.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, in the beginning, I felt like it wasn't necessarily the smartest thing to fight too hard, so I didn't. Ultimately, that ended up being a slight mistake. Sebi's pace was extremely strong, and the aero wash was really tricky to manage as well. You know, I think when you were kind of sitting within 0.5, 0.4, the draft you got was really strong, and then that outweighed the aero push. But when you were sitting back kind of 0.8, 0.7, you didn't really get a whole lot of draft, and you got a lot of aero wash, so it was tricky to kind of try and stay on there. So yeah, for me, really all I was trying to do was keep the gap as close as I could. Try and give Chan the best chance at fighting with Philip in the end, which obviously it ended up being extremely close. Came down to the last corner, but B2 there. We had to kind of think championship at the same time as well. At that point
Yeah.
we weren't fighting those two for the title. So it was important that we were just scoring points over our main competitors. So, I mean, obviously you want to go out there and win, but sometimes when it's not possible, your losses, you have to kind of keep them as good as they can be.
And ultimately, you'd taken 3 victories already in the championship, and there were only 3 races left of the championship, and nobody else had taken 2 victories. So you were in a very healthy position, regardless. And up until this day, you've taken 3, and there's no one else that's taken more than 1. So definitely, when you look at it like that, it's been a very, very strong season. The final round then that we've had so far, let's not forget that there is one more race at the end of March for our round 8, and therefore the final of the championship. Last round was at Spa, great track, again influenced a bit by Max Verstappen's return, but for both Verstappen and you guys, it was a bit of a disaster in the first stint. And was the second stint fun for you? I mean, points-wise, it doesn't look great on the points board, but it must have been great fun carving through the traffic.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the first stint was a bit of a tough one. We were kind of trying to take it patiently, knowing how strong the draft was. It could have easily been, like a 10-car train for the lead, really.
Yeah.
The aero push wasn't too bad at Spa, and like I say, the draft was insane. Obviously, ultimately, that didn't end up working out. We got hit from behind, and there was a few other incidents as well for other guys, which, I mean, ultimately ended up playing in our favor, to be fair. As unfortunate as that was for those guys, because most of the guys caught up in the incidents later on, a couple laps later, were also our championship rivals. So, yeah, I mean, in the end, that made things a little bit easier for us. But yeah, I mean, in that second stint, I was just really trying to kind of push as hard as I could, and try and gain as much time back as possible. Obviously, this field was quite spread out, so I wasn't necessarily going to make up many spots, and I knew that. But I was just trying to have a little bit of fun with it, have a bit of hot lapping, and make some sends where I could. I think maybe there was a 3 wide move down the Camel Straight. I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Cool.
But yeah, it was it was good fun, and yeah, I mean, ultimately our main goal after what happened on lap 1 was just to try and finish ahead of our previous worst result for the drops. That was really the main focus. Ultimately we wanted to try and do that, and we did, and we achieved that. So, at the end of the day, after what happened at the beginning, we set out a goal and we achieved that goal. So there was plenty to be happy about. But yeah, to be honest, during that race, I wasn't even really thinking about the championship at that point. I didn't realize that it could be sewn up. I mean, coming into it, I knew, okay, the points are looking good. Maybe there's a slim chance, but I didn't think a P16 would have sealed it. That's for sure. But no, it was good fun.
So where would you like the last round to be? Round 8. If you could choose anywhere on the iRacing servers, where would suit you, and where would you enjoy racing? You can't have Bathurst.
No, of course. I don't know if it would suit me, but I mean, I'm going to pick 2, right? I'm going to pick 2.
Okay.
I would say, from a chaos perspective, I think we should go to Long Beach. Long Beach? Yeah, Long Beach. We definitely should. Absolutely. I think that hairpin would be would be pure mayhem, and I think it'd be fun. Street circuits, to be honest, because I mean that was on one of the picks earlier on in the season, and we were doing a little bit of practice around there. And the F3 car was actually really fun. It was really enjoyable around that track. But other than that, to be fair, I think a track that would suit me and a track that I would enjoy a lot is actually going to the Nordschleife.
Oh,
I feel
well,
like,
okay. So 2
I mean,
complete
that could
mad
be,
tracks.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a series that kind of gives us that opportunity to be able to do something like that. So why not do it,
Yeah.
But no, I think the Nordschleife would be fun. The draft would be insane. The corners would suit that car. I think probably throw the low downforce setup on there, though, just to make things a little bit interesting, either low or high. But yeah, no, those would be my 2 picks. If I could pick the next votes, those would be my two picks. Florian, please, thanks.
We actually should have done the Nordschleifer in something random in the fun race, shouldn't we? Like when World Touring Cars first went to the Nordschleifer and did 3 laps, and it was just like, you can't race there. You need a GT3 car. It actually provides some quite entertaining racing. So there's another idea for you, Florian, who's the head of the championship. And by the way, thank you very much, Josh, for chatting with us. It was really great to hear your insight. The final round of the championship will be the beginning of a new VCO idea. So please make sure you tune in for the final round of the championship. You've got a bit of time to wait. I think it's a couple of weeks until we get to that point. But we are going to announce something absolutely massive from VCO during that program. And we will have feedback and analysis of that on my studio show the following Monday. So please make sure you tune in. Josh has got to win the championship for his teammate Chan. The Fun Race Championship is sewn up, but it'll be the pro drivers racing. So we'll throw something really crazy at them. And then who knows where we'll be racing and who knows who will be racing, because as we've already spoken about, we get different drivers each weekend, some very famous, some less so famous. And I think there should be some incredibly big names also joining us for that last round too. So it should be very, very interesting. And again, thank you very much, Josh, for joining us, and good luck at the weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been great to be back.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.